Very good evening, welcome to the programme, Talking Sheffield here on Sheffield Live TV. As ever, very honoured to be joined tonight by the chairman of the PFA, no less, Ritchie Humphreys, Professional Footballers Association. He represents and has done now for something around or approaching 3 years. And at 38 years old, he remains a professional footballer for Chesterfield, having begun his career at Sheffield Wednesday. So a very popular guest here, Ritchie. And Richard Hercock, one of my respected colleagues here in South Yorkshire. Richard is an esteemed sports writer, specifically, mainly a football writer for the Yorkshire Post. So you ought to get on, you two fellas. When you both came in, I said, you're bound to, because you've not actually met, had you?
No,
briefly
in press conferences over the years, but you know, a face in the crowd for Ritchie, I'm sure.
Well, I'm saying you're bound to get on to Richards. Ritchie corrects me. I assumed you'd been christened Richard.
No, and my mum's probably watching actually, so she'll put you right. No, christened Ritchie, and it's something that's carried with me probably all the way through school and into my professional life. Either Ritchie was spelt as Richard, or Ritchie spelt wrong. R-I-C-H-Y I've even had, or Humphreys has been spelt wrong. I actually played a game for Sheffield Wednesday away at Newcastle with Humphreys spelt incorrectly on the back of my shirt. So even all the way into professional football and still to today, whether it's some documents or whatever, it always has to be put incorrectly. And that's probably going to be happening to my kids, and obviously now my wife's took my name as well.
EYS, I always have to look it up. EYS at the end. Sometimes I, forget and have to look at that. But Ritchie, the peculiarity is R-I-T-C-H-I-E. Why?
That's my name. that's how you spell it.
Do you know where it comes from?
Not particularly, no. I think it's... People always say, well, they'll say, oh, Richard, and they'll try and wind me up. And I'll say, well, you don't ever see Richard spelled with a T in it, do you? So my name's Ritchie, just... Can you get with it, if that's all right?
This is very boring. We'll get on to some interesting questions. Richard, what have you been up to today?
I've been down to Middled Road to the Sheffield Wednesday press conference ahead of the weekend's game against Brentford. Spoke to Carlos Carvalho and and Daniel Pudel.
So, he's just Carlos here. Just stick to Carlos.
CC.
CC, do, yeah.
So yeah, that was a good day. Carlos in good spirits.
As always.
As always. I think he's had a few days in the sun back in Portugal, so... although it's not been too bad in Sheffield today, we've had a bit of sunshine. So.
Yeah, he's got nothing to be depressed about, whatever the weather at the minute, has he? I mean, you must look across the city there and look at Sheffield Wednesday, and they're going okay. They're
doing tremendously well, and obviously I've got friends and family who support Sheffield Wednesday, and they, I get the odd text and stuff. We're on his way back. We're getting back into the Premier League, and they've got a great opportunity, I think, this year because they've signed some tremendous players, and they've continued to do that as well. They keep picking up really good results, and they're in a good spot now. But if they can keep maintaining that form, there's always one team. The top two is not out of reach. Probably beginning of the season would have taken a playoff spot, but they've got to stay in there. And you never know if they have a good run all the way through. They could sneak into that top two in automatic.
It is attainable. I've had the sense, Richard, that they've underplayed it all the way through. That secretly, both the chairman, Dapon Chansiri, and Carlos, the head coach, have had that sneaking feeling about automatic promotion without saying so. Yeah. He's still not saying so. But
no, neither of them are. But I think at the beginning of the season, when the chairman started talking about Premier League in 2 years, Ritchie will know you don't forward plan that much. You want success now, whether you're a player or a coach. You don't think, I'm playing quite well now, it should be good next year. No, you think, well, you've got the opportunity now, you take it while you've got it. Absolutely. Because who knows what next season's going to bring. I mean, you look at the clubs coming down out of the Premier League, and they're big clubs with big support. There's never a better time than this season to actually go up.
And it's looking ever more possible. I wouldn't say probable, but it's looking possible. You alluded there to your time. I'm going back to '96, David Plead or whatever. Last week in here, John Pearson said, and he stopped playing around that time, and he said this is the best Sheffield Wednesday team he's seen as a spectator, and he's an avid fan. And of course, that era, that period includes the Di Canio Carboni days as well. So it's quite a statement.
It is. I mean, just before I started as a YTS, I think the team that got to the cup finals in '93 had some tremendous players in you. I mean, you could go through it, and they pretty much everyone was an international. We had quite a lot of England players playing in that team, and the team that I got into, obviously, like sort of David Hurst and Chris Waddle, John Sheridan was still around the place. So for me, as a young footballer, it was a fantastic upbringing to be around those kind of players. Mark de Greiser, these sort of international players was fantastic for me. And you alluded to it, but there, in 1996, I think it was August 96 was the last time Sheffield Wednesday were top of the Premier League. And that was due to a really good start at the beginning of that season.
It was. And due to
I think we just missed out on Europe that year, actually.
Yeah, that was David Fleet was manager. You say you were top around early season. That was partly due to some spectacular goals from
I didn't want to mention it, Alan.
Did you get 3 or was it 4 early season goals?
Yeah, 3 in the first 4 games, and it was sort of, that was my... And I had some appearances and 1 start, which was my debut the season before, but that was my first real taste of consecutive games, consecutive starts. And we just went on a good run. I mean, we went up to Newcastle and won. It was a tremendous... at the time... I think they just signed Shearer and they were, a strong outfit at home. We got a win there. We won at Elland Road early in the season, a local derby. We won the first game against Villa, and then we won on Sky against Leicester. So those first 4 games were a bit of a whirlwind to me now. It doesn't seem that long ago. Obviously, it's 20 years ago now. Yeah,
well, after that great season, finishing high up under David Fleet, it was downhill all the way after that. It's only really now beginning to come back up. Later on, we'll talk to Ritchie about Chesterfield. He's still a player at 38 years of age. We'll talk to him as well about his PFA job and also 1 or 2 issues within the game. For instance, ticket prices, manager sackings. There's a load to talk about. 3 managers going on one day this week. Just before that, just to top and tail the early part on Sheffield Wednesday, something emerging from the press conference today, Richard, that you wanted to raise?
Yeah, I think it's a long-standing issue. It's about the training ground at Hillsborough, Middlewood Road. I mean, Richie will know from his playing days, there's not much changed. And I think 2004, Dave Allen talked about selling the training ground, moving over to Mosborough, and because it's outdated, it's limited in space. And you know what it's like now with academies. They need so much space, pitches, etc. And I think they're looking at either upgrading the current place at Middlewood Road or actually moving away. They're looking at different options. It's all part of the chairman's remit to do a root and branch review of the whole club, really.
Do you think at some time he might even look at a new stadium as well? I don't think he will in the immediate future, but you just wonder about that, don't you?
Yeah, I think the stadium, whether it's suited for Premier League football, whether it can grow, because its current capacity is 39,000. If they want to be a successful Premier League club, you really have got to be looking towards 50,000. Can they get that in Hillsborough? Is it worth investing money in the stadium or looking elsewhere and building a purpose-built stadium? I think the chairman's looking at everything. I don't think he's going to leave any stone unturned in how he can make the club a success. Yeah,
it's part of his ambitious outlook, and certainly we take no convincing on that whatsoever. He definitely is. Although I would have thought Hillsborough's pretty adequate for a first season back in the Premier League, were they to get there. It's only the really top games that would fill it, in my view, from the experience previously. I would hope to be pleasantly surprised on that. We talked about long-standing issue regarding the training. It is long-standing. Ritchie remembers it well.
Absolutely. I used to train there when I was a schoolboy when we were 14, and what is the AstroTurf pitches now, they were sort of like a red gravel kind of pitch where we used to train, but the buildings are pretty much the same. I mean, they've knocked through a few rooms and things like that and added sort of some porter cabins, etc. But obviously the pitches of the dimensions of the areas stayed exactly the same. And if they were to upgrade that facility, I mean, I've been this season to play a couple of practice matches, and like I said, things are the same. They did some modernisation in probably in the late 90s, added a new building with a kitchen, etc. But I think it'll be fantastic because it is the pitches have always been good, and I think for a first team base with new buildings and stuff, it would be fantastic. Now, if you're talking about academies and the depth that they probably want to go to, that you need a bigger area. And I know that some football clubs and the state-of-the-art ones that are around the country have separate academies to where the first team train. Now, I think there has to be a pathway for those younger players to see what it's like where the first team train, and to be around them on a daily basis. The senior players can mentor some of those youth team players coming through, and I think that can be a little bit lost in some academies where they may feel that so far detached from the first team, they can probably never see a pathway through. So I think that if there was going to be one site, it would have to be obviously probably away from Middlewood Road.
Great point. We're not going to leave Sheffield United out of this conversation, not least because you are a Sheffield United fan, yeah?
Correct, yes.
Admits it with a smile on his face, going way back.
Oh, quite openly. We were talking about it earlier, that when I broke into Wednesday's team, I was always going to get asked as a Sheffield boy, who do you support? And, you just straight up. Well, I was brought up a Sheffield United fan, went to the matches with my dad, and we've been to one or two whilst I've been in the professional game, but obviously my dad's come to watch me wherever I've been. But I've got a boy now who's 2, likes football, and obviously comes to watch Chesterfield and enjoys.
I hope he's going to be a Spire right then, yeah?
Well, I think depending if I stay in football, if I leave football once I finish playing, I don't know yet. That's a separate conversation probably. But if Sydney wants to go and watch football, then maybe myself or his granddad will take him to Bramall Lane.
You've picked another name that can be spelt various ways. Sydney, SYD, SID.
Yeah. No, SID anyway. Yeah.
SID. Chesterfield. We will talk about Sheffield United as well, and they're having rather a contrasting season at the moment. I don't know if you've even seen the Blades. Have you had time? Or?
Only the game we've played against them, which was the first day of the season.
Yeah.
And I've seen, obviously, clips and stuff on television. Yeah. And I've spoke about it with other people that every, what you would, big club that's been in League One, you can go to Sheffield Wednesday, Sheffield United, Leeds, Southampton. It's never been easy just to jump straight back out of the division. It's a tough division, and has been for a long time. I mean, Bristol did great last year, the way they got out of it, and we've seen it before. It's took a while to get back out.
But 5 years?
Well, Sheffield United it's a big club, and obviously I want them to do as well as possible. And again, there'll be one team from the middle of the pack that probably can put the runs together and get into the playoffs. And Sheffield United will certainly probably be one of those.
Yeah. Talking of allegiances, most journalists on this patch keep that to themselves. If there is an allegiance, they don't. I had to come clean some years ago because it got me out of mischief. Not only is it true, but it stops the Wednesday United argument of bias that I support Chesterfield. Now then, you're a brave man, aren't you, Mr. Hercock?
Yeah.
You're going to make an admission to the watching world this evening.
Well, yes, I am. No, I'm a Sheffield Wednesday fan. Yeah, I mean, I don't see any journalists.
You're on Twitter, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Is your phone here?
No, it's over there. I turned it on silent. It's funny because one of my old school friends is a Sheffield United fan, and I was at the game at Bramall Lane last week, and he tweeted me and said, "Have you changed allegiance?" And it's a case of, most weeks I'm either at Bramall Lane or at Hillsborough. So that's professional, that's a job. But I think everybody who loves football is a fan, and they've been brought up watching their own club. Sheffield Wednesday were my local club, 5 minutes away from where I live. I had my first season ticket in 1983 on Howard Wilkinson's first season there. And over the years I had to leave the season ticket for the job. It's sometimes hard covering your own team. It's probably harder covering Sheffield Wednesday than Sheffield United because I can be totally impartial covering another club. But it doesn't affect me.
I mean, it's not a crime to support a football team, is it? Everybody grows up supporting one team or another. And you're one of so many players, Ritchie, who've played for either Wednesday or United, having grown up supporting the rival team.
Yeah, and that's just like you just said. That's the way it is. If my dad and my granddad and my family supported Sheffield United, we live. You live near Hillsborough. I live near Bramall Lane. We walk down to the game, walk back. Or sometimes Mum and my sister would come, and the kind of professional thing for me when I was sort of 13, 14. I say professional then, but I was involved in a football club, and they let me go, and that was heartbreaking to me. Yeah. As the dream of me putting on a red and white shirt wasn't happening, and sort of had to go back to just playing Sunday football again until Sheffield Wednesday picked me up. And obviously, like we talked about earlier,
you were desperate then?
Well, not no, absolutely not. You know, you're Sheffield at heart, and you know whoever you play for, you will know. You'll be people in your family, even not just friends, that where the loyalty is divided. It does in my family. My cousin, who was a Sheffield United fan, married a Sheffield Wednesday fan, and my godchildren are Sheffield Wednesday fans, big ones, and so our family's split.
Yeah, there's no shame in any of it. Let's move on. Sacking. Now that is an area where often there is shame. The figures are incredible. I think I read this week 43 of the managers who started this season of the 92 clubs have left, most of them sacked. And there were 3 on one day this week. And I don't think we saw any of them coming. Neil Redfern was first at Rotherham, then Paul Clement at Derby County, and then Ronnie Moore at Hartlepool. What do you make of all this, Richard? Your PFA, not LMA, which is the League Managers Association, it's got to be a concern for everybody in football, this, hasn't it?
Well, you say it's not PFA, it's LMA, but generally all the LMA members are PFA members too, or ex-PFA members. So, yeah, it affects, you know, the coaching courses I've been on, that coaches, potential managers go on. There's a manager's course that the lady that does the stats, Dr. Sue Bridgewater, I went on that course and she showed us all the stats, and sort of we were like, well, what are the chances of having this being a long-term viable job? You know, the stats are there, that it doesn't stack up, but it doesn't stop people's desire and the love of the game to get educated further in coaching, to get educated in all the off-field stuff that managers have to deal with, which is what that course was about. And, you know, you look at the, you know, I mean, Sir Alex Ferguson's obviously the obvious standout one, where the longevity of keeping one person in charge, you know, brought fruition. And it showed all the success they had, and it's just become part of the game now. So
but it shouldn't be. What can the PFA do about it?
Well, the PFA and the LMA, obviously. I mean, what can you do apart from try and get the owners and people in charge at football clubs to look at the stats to see, well, if you kept someone in charge, would it be better? I mean, lower down to Paul Tisdale at Exeter, doing a tremendous job. And being there, I think he's probably one of the longest now, to about 9 years.
And here in Sheffield, Mr. Adkins at Sheffield United, after 8 months, is the region's, that's South Yorkshire, North Derbyshire, longest serving current manager. Longest serving. That's an incredible statistic.
Yeah. And he only arrived last summer.
And there will be those who say, well, he might be going next. I sincerely hope not, because Sheffield United have got to get out of that pattern. But should there be some kind of deterrent? Should there be a points deduction for clubs who sack a manager during a season? What do you think?
That's you know, a conversation that people, the governing bodies, would have to sit and talk about. We would only voice probably our opinions ourselves in the LMA. The governing bodies and the authorities would come up with something. It's come into the game. It happens all the time. And you know, before Ronnie was at Hartlepool, I mean, Paul Murray only got sort of like 8 or 9 games, and you know, I know that's happened in the past, but not. It seems to be. It's crept in more and more, hasn't it?
Can football club owners be educated? Should there be a course for them to go on? I just don't know. I suppose market forces in the end, isn't it?
No.
You know, I mean, it's not right, is it? It can't be right, can it?
Well, there's even talks about, I mean, in the past, transfer windows.
Yeah,
you know, where you can't get rid of your coach or the manager during the season.
Yeah.
But I suppose that would happen. They just put them on gardening leave and then bring someone from within the club to take over. It is impossible. I think, you know, you're always going to get trigger-happy owners that things aren't working out.
Keeps us busy, though.
Yeah, it'd be boring as a journalist.
There is that.
And the bookmakers, yes.
And the bookmakers as well. Right, in the second half, you know, that's gone. The second half's longer. We're going to talk about Chesterfield and your role at Chesterfield, the fact that you're playing on Friday night against Burton, the league leaders, away from home. We'll talk more about Sheffield Wednesday, more about Sheffield United, and ticket prices as well, and other of the big issues in the game. Rejoin us in around 5 minutes. See you then.